Hi, as I promised, now I'm going to teach you a trick to avoid having to do find or get component in most cases. And actually, it is even more powerful than using code. And this trick only uses drag and drop. Let me show you what I mean. Here in find and get component, first we had to write code in start to find the ground GameObject, and so this gets populated. And then through that we do GetComponent, and so we populate the reference to the mesh collider that is on the ground GameObject. And then through the reference to the mesh collider we read convex, right? Here. And then we can set it on and off, and we see that it becomes from false to true and back to false, okay? But this is not really necessary. That's because we can get a reference to a GameObject by simply drag and dropping the GameObject itself onto it. Look at that. See, it's not even running right now. Actually, it shouldn't not run it. Otherwise, when you stop it, you lose it, right? It's the usual rule. So we have a reference to the ground. In fact, if I click it, see, it highlights it here. I do it again. See, it really is referring to the ground. And what about the mesh collider component that is on the ground? How do I populate it? Well, don't worry. You just drag and drop again the ground, and notice that this time says, yeah, I understand that the type of this field is mesh collider, and you drag and dropped a GameObject on it. But I have given a peek, and I have seen that there is a mesh collider component on it, so yeah, I get a reference to that one. So because we want only the reference to the component, we don't even need the first one, right? We just, because again, by drag and dropping the GameObject, it goes through the GameObject reference, it does the get component, automatically populates it. So we don't have really a use for this one. It's not like we are printing the name of the GameObject or anything like that. That was just a means to an end. So let's actually remove it completely. Let's get into the code and show that we don't need this. That means we don't need to populate it at all. In fact, we don't need to do even get component. All we need is to keep this so that it's public, it appears in the IDE, and we can drag and drop the GameObject, ground GameObject from the hierarchy straight into the field that is of type mesh collider, and then it's smart, it sees that there is a mesh collider component in there, and then that's it. And it works. So through this reference, now you can access convex like before. Wanna prove it? So, by the way, I can even completely comment out start, just to show that I don't need it at all. I'm not doing anything. Both instructions were commented out anyway. So I go back to Unity, and so it recompiles. You'll see that ground geo will disappear, and only mesh collider will be left. And it still remembers that the reference I put in there, but if I did it again, it would be the same, not change at all, right? So I would maybe to change the name of the component because it's still called the find and get component. Obviously, it should be called something else because it's doing neither find nor get component, just drag and drop. But now go here and let's remind ourselves that convex is false. So when we press play, everything should work and print false, like before. See? Now I check it becomes true, and it prints that it is true. I uncheck it, goes to false, and false. Now, this not only is simpler, but it has even an advantage that if the ground were disabled, right, as long as the mesh collider is enabled, I can still use it. Because here's the problem. Find will not find ground if it is disabled. So just give a peek back to the code. This function returns null. If the ground object is there but is disabled, it actually doesn't find it. So it is even better in the sense that if all I want to, for instance, is to read whether convex is true or false in this moment, and I don't even need that the ground is enabled, I just access a component on the ground and read and write the fields in it, it's fine. It actually works with drag and drop better than it does than doing it programmatically. So for once, simply is even more powerful. And it's pretty sweet, right? So let's go back here, and we see that it's all good, right? So now this is disabled. All right. Let's give it another try. Will it work? Let's remember convex is false. Ground itself is disabled, but we are skipping the ground, so nothing. False. We don't even need to do find. That's why it works. Now I click it, and it's true. I unclick it, false. It works perfectly. Despite the fact the ground, that is the one that has the component we are looking for and reading a field of, is disabled. It's great. So thank you, and let's see that is good enough for today. Thank you.